I think people want to believe somewhere that magic is real. और उनके दिमाग में है कि अच्छा मैजिक भी होगा, बुरा मैजिक भी होगा, बिकॉज मैजिक इज दिस वंडरस थिंग जिसको आप पिन पॉइंट नहीं कर सकते कि एग्जैक्टली क्या है. तो आपने डिविजन्स बना दिए. अगर कुछ अच्छा हो रहा है तो वो व्हाइट मैजिक है, अगर कुछ बुरा हो रहा है तो वो ब्लैक मैजिक है.
Hi everyone, welcome to Chalchitra Talks. मेरा नाम वाणी है and in this episode I had the opportunity to sit down with Karan Singh Magic, who is a brilliant entertainer. He's a mind reader, mentalist, magician, psychological illusionist and a lot more. In this episode we talk about his recommendations, movies, books, films, podcasts, sneakers and so much more. I had an amazing time recording this episode and I hope you find it equally interesting. So without wasting further time, let's jump right in. Hi Karan, welcome to Chalchitra Talks.
Finally, after I think 1 year of me watching some of your content, I am finally here.
I am slightly nervous and I know a lot of people must have already asked you this question every time you speak with them, but how careful should we be around you with our thoughts? I know you're not constantly mind reading.
Be very, very careful. No, I think no, I'm only reading minds when I'm on stage or performing. Right now, I'm just a normal introverted human being.
That's a relief. But this is something I wanted to hear you tell me. But anyway, I want to start with books. What have you been reading these days?
These days, I am reading 2 books at the same time. One of them is Jimmy Carr's Before and Laughter. Jimmy Carr is a stand-up comedian. He does just sort of one-liner jokes. तो वो कहानी नहीं बनाते हैं जैसे वो सादा comedians होते हैं. It's just one-liner jokes, and in a 1.5-hour show, you will hear like 400 jokes. It's just line after line after line. So he's written a book during the pandemic, talking about how he became a comedian, about his goals and what you should do to achieve it. It's like a self-help book mixed with like an autobiography.
Right.
I'm reading that. तो उसमें कुछ nuggets हैं, especially for a performer, which are incredible. There's this bit where he talks about that for comedians, he says, you're a door-to-door salesman of laughter, because you're going from city to city trying to make people laugh. That's pretty much what their job is, which really connected with me, because I'm like a door-to-door salesman of wonder, trying to provide wonder to people in different cities. And I never thought of it that way. And that stuck with me. The other one I'm reading is Chandler, Matthew Perry's book, which recently came out. I've only just started it. The first line in itself is grabs you. It says that this is Matthew Perry and I should be dead. That's the first line of the book, which is incredible. It talks about unki struggles with drug addiction while he was shooting for Friends. तो जब मैं छोटा था और मैं Friends देखता था तो मुझे लगता था अरे हर सीजन में अलग क्यों दिखता है. And now we know कि वो हर सीजन में अलग क्यों दिखते हैं, because he's going through so much in life.
Right.
So yeah, those are the 2 books I'm reading.
And do you also have any books that you'd like to recommend to people apart from the books that you are currently reading?
Yeah, I think every single human being on the planet should read the Harry Potter series. I think very cliched, but I think it is so important. I've read each book at least 50 times, if not more. So I've read all 7 books 50 times and more. Because उसमें इतना कुछ है यार. It talks about love, loss, magic is just a side portion of it. I think जो as you grow old, उसमें इतनी सारी चीजें ऐसे होती हैं which just connect with you. Like I'm 31 now. I started reading Harry Potter when I was 13. और 18 साल हो गए, and every time I pick it up, I find something new in it which appeals to me at that point in life. जब मैं छोटा था तो शायद मुझे कुछ चीजें अपील ना करती, but अब वो करनी अपील शुरू हो रही है about love, about loss. जब मैं 13 साल का था मुझे loss पता नहीं था क्या होता है. But Harry Potter at 31 is very, very different. So that is one that people should definitely read. Another one, because of the kind of impact that he's had on our generation, is Steve Jobs' biography by Walter Isaacson. That book is something that I should definitely recommend. Uski jo last line hai is something I remember always. The guy interviewed Walter Isaacson, jinhone book likhi hai, he asked him about death, because jab wo book release hui thi, that was, I think it released 18 days after Steve Jobs died. तो बहुत ही वो सही टाइम पे आई थी in terms of the book. So the last chapter is him talking about death, and Steve Jobs says that I think death we romanticize it too much, or we are scared of it too much. We don't know what's going to happen. We think of an afterlife. We think if there will be an afterlife. We think about heaven and hell. But I would like to think it's like an off switch where click and you're gone, and that's the end of it. And then he took a pause and then he says, maybe that's why there is no dedicated switch off button on Apple products. And I was like, whoa, mind blown. So that's one book you should definitely read. For people who are into, I think अब कोई भी अगर कैमरा के सामने सब होते हैं, कंटेंट क्रिएशन कर रहे होते हैं, इंस्टा स्टोरी भी बना रहे होते हैं, तो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज होती है बोलना, और उसकी इंपॉर्टेंस लोग समझते नहीं है कि अच्छी चीजें बोलने से और अच्छी तरह बोलने से लोगों पे कितना इम्पैक्ट कॉज कर सकते हैं आप. सो देयर इज दिस बुक कॉल्ड से इट लाइक ओबामा which talks about Barack Obama and his public speaking skill. So that is again one book that people should definitely read. I think those will be my top 3.
Nice. The last one is sounds very interesting. Say it like
बहुत अच्छी है यार. उसमें कुछ ऐसी चीजें हैं which you can't believe that someone's putting in that kind of an effort to talk. हमें लगता है बात ही तो करनी है, इसमें क्या मुश्किल है.
Yeah. Okay, I also want to know, okay, ever since we decided that we'll be doing an episode, I started researching about magic, and I'm the kind of person who likes to go in depth in things. So many proper notes banaye the, whether it concerns you or not. And I came across different types of magic. So there's gray magic, white magic, black magic, low magic, high magic. I don't know what that is, but I want to understand.
Even I don't know what that is. I have an idea, but
because mere liye definition was very easy of magic. Magic, I used to think, is illusion. But is there a difference between these kinds of magic versus what we see today?
यार आई थिंक जॉनर्स ऑफ मैजिक होते हैं. जैसे जॉनर्स ऑफ म्यूजिक होंगे रैप, सूफी, हिप हॉप, ऐसे ही जॉनर्स ऑफ मैजिक होंगे कि स्टेज मैजिक है, क्लोज अप मैजिक है, मेंटलिज्म है, कार्ड मैजिक है, कॉइन मैजिक है, ऐसी चीजें हैं. व्हाट यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट ग्रे मैजिक, व्हाइट मैजिक, ब्लैक मैजिक, दो दैट्स मोर मिथोलॉजिकल के कोई काला जादू
where white magic is legal and black magic is legal, so they're identified by law as well. And
yeah, that used to, I don't know, अगर कुछ countries में, yes, of course there is where it talks about black magic being illegal, because अभी तक लोगों के में कुछ वो misconceptions हैं कि कोई किसी पे भूत चढ़ा सकता है, और there is this concept of जिन use कर रहे हो magic के लिए, which is a prevalent thought in Islam. In Hinduism, of course, there's mythology where people believe that you can click your fingers and make wondrous things happen. अब पता नहीं कितना किसमें क्या सच है क्या नहीं है, but this is all born out of so many years of history, and I think people want to believe somewhere that magic is real. और उनके दिमाग में है कि अच्छा मैजिक भी होगा, बुरा मैजिक भी होगा, बिकॉज मैजिक इज दिस वंडरस थिंग जिसको आप पिन पॉइंट नहीं कर सकते कि एग्जैक्टली क्या है. तो आपने डिविजन्स बना दिए, अगर कुछ अच्छा हो रहा है तो वो व्हाइट मैजिक है, अगर कुछ बुरा हो रहा है तो वो ब्लैक मैजिक है. लोगों ने ऐसा अपने दिमाग में बनाया हुआ है. अगर मैं फुल तांत्रिक टाइप ड्रेस करके मैं आपका माइंड रीड करूं, I might be passed off as a god man. Because I do it in a hoodie and jeans, I'm passed off as an entertainer. So there's that very big difference there. I think a lot depends on how you're presenting magic, or which derives perception. You said illusion. I think magic is a lot to do with perception also. अगर मैं mind reading करता हूँ, for example, 3 साल के बच्चे को इतना incredible नहीं लगेगा. बट अगर मैं एक हैट में से रैबिट निकालता हूँ, वो 3 साल के बच्चे को बहुत सही लगेगा. भाई अगर मैं एक 30 साल के इंसान के सामने रैबिट में से हैट निकालता हूँ, उसको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. अगर मैं उसका माइंड रीड करता हूँ, उसको बहुत फर्क पड़ेगा. सो द परसेप्शन इज लाइक दैट.
दिस इज समथिंग आई नेवर थॉट अबाउट एक्चुअली. Do you also have some essential reading that you'd like to recommend to people who are just in reading or watch list pe kuch bhi
about magic?
About if somebody's intrigued by illusion, or maybe, I'm not sure how to describe this, but what you do, for example, psychological
illusionist.
Yeah.
One movie, I think a lot of people would have already seen it, but अगर नहीं देखी है तो The Prestige नाम की एक मूवी है by Christopher Nolan, जिसका I'll show you, I'll tilt my camera, जिसका यहाँ पे पोस्टर भी लगा हुआ है मेरे रूम में, which is an incredible movie, much like Harry Potter. मैंने वो भी कम से कम 50-60 बार देखी है, and every single time I see it, there's something new in it. The entire movie plays out like a magic trick. The way it's written, it's playing out like a magic trick, where it starts off. आपने देखी है Prestige?
Yeah.
So the first bit is Michael Caine doing that. There's a monologue that says every magic trick has 3 parts or acts. The first part is called the pledge and all of that. He talks about that. And that's a shadowing for what's coming in the rest of the movie. और पूरी मूवी सिर्फ उस मोनोलॉग पे बेस्ड है, and it's incredible. So definitely watch The Prestige. There's another movie called The Illusionist, which stars Edward Norton. वो भी बहुत अच्छी है. वो that goes into mixing magic with movie magic also. So there's a little bit of that, but the essence remains the same. The Prestige the beauty of the Prestige is that it does tricks which happen in real life also. Jaise Prestige mein there is one of the first tricks that you see is making that bird disappear in that cage. That's a very real magic trick. And that's been done for thousands of years. So I think you should definitely watch that. If you're interested in क्या कहते हैं, the history of magic, especially the history of Indian magic, there is this book called Jadoowala Jugglers and Jinns, which is by this Australian man called John Zabrowski. It is an incredible book. थोड़ी मुश्किल read है because it's all history of just magic. So if you're a magic nerd, तो बहुत मजा आएगा. It mixes India's independence with magic also. How prime ministers have used magic as a soft power in India. अब इतना नहीं होता है, मगर पहले magic has very deep roots in India. So it's been used by governments as policy making also. It is incredible कुछ चीजें जो उस किताब में है.
Did they use hypnosis or anything?
नहीं उसमें hypnosis नहीं. Like soft power as in जैसे आजकल योगा हमारा soft power है. पूरा दुनिया योगा करना चाह रहा है. It's sort of like that. Magic, if you look at the greatest magicians in the world right now, if you look at David Copperfield, David Blaine, all these people, इन्होंने अपना करियर कहीं ना कहीं इंडिया का कोई ट्रिक से शुरू करा है. David Copperfield का one of the first illusions that he had in mind was something called the Indian rope trick, जो within the magic world बहुत ही ज्यादा famous है, and that has origins in India, which is basically आपने वो मदारी देखे हैं जो street performances करते हैं, वैसे ही कि वो एक बच्चा होगा, एक छोटी टोकरी होगी, उसके अंदर एक rope होगी, वो बीन बजाएगा magician, and the rope becomes erect, rope पूरी खड़े हो जाती है ऐसे. And then the bacha climbs the rope, and it's not supported by anything. Rope ऐसे ही और बच्चा ऊपर जाता है, and as he goes up, he disappears into clouds. And then the magician follows him and then brings him back down. It's a beautiful, beautiful illusion. And the best part is कि दुनिया में कभी किसी ने वो देखी नहीं है. Because over the years, the history of that has changed so much कि किसी को पता नहीं है कि असली में होता क्या है उस ट्रिक में. Some people have talked about blood also, कि ऊपर magician जाता है, वो बच्चा काट के नीचे फेंक देता है. And then the बच्चा... You heard of this? Yeah,
I've heard of that version.
Yeah, and then the kid is reborn from the ashes. ऐसी भी versions हैं इसकी बहुत सारी. बहुत सारे इसके अलग-अलग versions हैं, but David Copperfield का first inspiration was that. For David Blaine, he read a book called Swami Mantra, which is a book based on Indian mythology and Indian belief. कि उसमें एक trick था. I'm sure you've seen fakirs and everyone जो अपने through nails डालते हैं, उनको कुछ नहीं होता है. And Blaine does that now. And that has sort of roots in India. So India ka magic has been such a soft power that initially when we got independence, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru and the initial sort of government that we had, they took magicians to other parts of the countries from India to showcase what India is about. आज तक अगर आप वेस्ट में बोलते हो इंडिया के बारे में जो बहुत अनअवेयर होंगे, उनका पहला thought about India is the land of snake charmers, which has roots in magic. So history of Indian magic is so deep and so profound that I think Jadoowalas, Jugglers and Jinns should be a must read for everybody. It's a difficult read, but it's a must read, definitely.
Nice. And what is your favorite trick? After I'm imagining you must have read a lot of stuff about the...
Far too many. Favorite trick that I do or favorite trick that I've seen?
Both of them, actually.
I think favorite trick that I do is something that I think I was one of the first people in the world who started doing it, and now there are a lot of magicians around the world who do the same thing, which is figuring out somebody's phone password or ATM pin. ये मैंने 2012 में करना शुरू करा था. अब सारे magicians करते हैं, but I think I would like to believe that at least in India I was the first one who started doing it, and that till today is in my show. मैं weekend पे 2 shows करके आया हूँ, चंडीगढ़ और बैंगलोर में, and that was the highlight of the show still, because it's that feeling of it's something so private, but here I am, I can read your mind and figure out what it is. I think that remains up top for me. To watch tricks, I think there are too many for me to pinpoint. हर version of magic, हर genre of magic में मेरा एक favorite होगा. Card tricks में अलग होगा, stage magic में अलग होगा, close-up magic में अलग होगा. Like I can never forget David Blaine doing a trick on TV, which was the first trick I remember seeing. David Blaine holds a card, he hits it, and the card changes. And that's for me is a beautiful trick. It took me 6 months to learn, and this was when I was 11 years old, and that remains one of my favorites. Stage magic में Chris Angel and David Copperfield, who are 2 very big magicians, have this version where they fly. which is not the kind of magic that I do, but they're levitating on stage, which is beautiful. And both of them do it in their own style. David Copperfield बहुत classical version में करता है, पीछे piano music बज रहा है, and he does this and he floats in the air. Chris Angel का at the same time is very different. It's very goth. पीछे rock music बज रहा है. He screams now. He has क्या कहते हैं, काजल निकल रहा है उनकी आंखों से ऐसे, and he does this and he starts floating. So both of them have their own version of presenting it, and both of them are incredible. And I've had the fortune of seeing both of these live also, which is an incredible experience. Card tricks mein, there is this Spanish magician called Juan Tamariz, who is considered amongst magicians the godfather of magic. इनको public ज़्यादा नहीं जानती है, but magicians सारे इनको भगवान consider करते हैं. David Blaine also considers him God. Copperfield also. Everybody really looks up to him. He has written books on just the psychology of magic. उन्होंने ग्राफ्स बनाए हैं लोगों के अटेंशन स्पैन पे कि किस पॉइंट के ट्रिक में अटेंशन कितनी देनी होनी चाहिए, और अगर वो कम अटेंशन दे रहे हैं तो आपको क्या करना चाहिए ताकि वो ग्राफ ऊपर हो जाए. इट इज इनक्रेडिबल. So Juan Tamariz is someone who's God, and I have seen him do some of the things which make me like an 11-year-old boy who's just getting into magic again. It's beautiful.
You also said psychology of magic, and how important is psychology as a subject?
Oh, incredibly. बहुत ज़्यादा.
Has this also helped you navigate life or perhaps relationships in general?
Oh, I think some of them have ruined relationships also because you get such a good understanding of psychology. पता चल जाता है कब तुम्हारा partner तुम्हें झूठ बोल रहा है, because you've read so much about human psychology and the way people behave. But within magic, it is so important कि किसी को, because magic is the only art form, especially the kind of magic that I do, जो मैं अकेले नहीं कर सकता. I need somebody from the audience to take part in. अगर मैं म्यूजिक कर रहा हूँ, you can just sit there and listen. अगर मैं कॉमेडी कर रहा हूँ, you can sit there and laugh. But in magic, I need someone I'm doing the trick on. So just to understand, अगर मैं किसी को स्टेज पे ला रहा हूँ 1000-2000 लोग या even 2 लोगों के सामने, to make them feel comfortable, उनकी psychology समझना, to make sure that they are the star of the show when they are on stage, उन्हें comfortable कैसे feel कराना है, at the same time उन्हें entertain भी कैसे करना है. So there's a lot that you have to do that has to do with psychology. So I've read a lot of books on psychology also. I have read a lot of books on this thing called neuro-linguistic programming, which is NLP. And I've done a course in it also. So I think it is so important because I think any storytelling, because I think what we're doing is a storytelling art form, is so deep-rooted in psychology. And I think it's so important that you understand the psychology of not just people, but an audience as a whole. And I think for that, you have to read a lot. And I think it's important to get an understanding of everything.
I have a very stupid question.
No,
what is
please ask.
Neuro-linguistic programming?
Neuro-linguistic programming, यार एक study है. कई लोग बोलते हैं कि scam है. मैं बहुत divided हूँ अभी भी कि scam है कि नहीं. If I break it down into 3 words, NLP, which is, first word is neuro, which is brain. Linguistic is language. Programming is programming. So you're basically using language to program the brain. And you're using certain techniques where you can influence someone, or you can hypnosis में use होता है, hypnotherapy में use होता है ये सब कुछ. Like for example, if I'm talking to you right now, Vaani, and whatever I say, this is making sense to you, right? जो भी मैंने बोला इसको, this had zero meaning to it. But because while I was saying and I was nodding, you started nodding with me. Like right now also you did. So that's just something that you can do to influence people. अब जरूरी नहीं है कि सब पे काम करेगा, जरूरी नहीं है कि दिस इज नॉट अ प्रूवन साइंस. इट इज समथिंग दैट पीपल थिंक दैट इट वर्क्स. ऐसे इसमें और काफी चीजें हैं where you can use words to influence people's thinking. अगर जैसे मैं बोलता हूँ think of any color, usually the first color that comes into people's mind is red. Again, it's just the way it's done, the way you say it, and I think this uses NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, and done at a very big level. कुछ shows में मैंने करा हुआ है. There is also mixing subliminal messaging with it. जो आजकल अगर आप मूवी, the first usage of subliminal messaging was अगर आप 1950s या 60s में अगर आप मूवी देखने जाते थे, तब ब्रांडिंग शुरू हुई थी, बाय पॉपकॉर्न, बाय कोका कोला. वो बड़ा बड़ा आता था, तो आपके दिमाग में बैठ जाता कि आपको ये लेना है, और आसपास जब आप पॉपकॉर्न सूंघते भी हो आजकल थिएटर में, आपको मन करता है कि आप भी खा लो. So that's a way of subliminal messaging, which is also like a subsection of NLP. तो ये मैंने अपने shows में भी use करा है, to if I have to influence what somebody is thinking of, adding a few cues like this and planting a thought in someone's head. तो ऐसी चीजें करी हुई हैं मैंने. But अभी तक ये ऐसा नहीं है दैट्स अ प्रूवन साइंस. अगर किसी को जानना है इसके बारे में, रिचर्ड बैंडलर करके एक इंसान है जिन्होंने, हु इज द फाउंडर ऑफ एनएलपी, उनकी एक किताब भी है कॉल्ड फ्रॉग्स इनटू प्रिंसेस, which is a very difficult book to read again, but अगर आप पढ़ते हो तो उसमें काफी चीजें हैं जो आप सीख सकते हो. They go into a little bit of mind reading also. अब पता नहीं, वो भी प्रूवन नहीं है कि अगर आप आंखें आपकी किस तरफ जा रही हैं सोचते हुए, तो उसके बेसिस पे पता चल सकता है कि आप किस फीलिंग के बारे में सोच रहे हो. If you're
Yeah,
thinking
I've heard of this actually. I think I
हाँ,
don't know exactly, but yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I'll give you an example. What's the color of the front door of your house?
White.
Right, yeah. So for a second you had to think, right? And right now, because we're on a Zoom, you won't break eye contact as much because you're looking at the screen. But usually kya hota hai, the moment you do this, people break eye contact and they think, what's the color? And the direction that their eyes move in can tell you a lot. तो अगर ऊपर जा रही हैं, they're thinking of something visual. नीचे जा रही हैं, something audio. अगर इस तरफ, बीच की तरफ जा रही हैं, they're thinking of a feeling. और उसने ऐसा भी करा हुआ कि अगर लेफ्ट अप जा रहा है तो they're thinking of something visual which is true. अगर वो राइट अप देख रहे हैं, they're thinking of something visual which is a lie. They're
I have this
making up
urge to look here, but I'm not.
हाँ, all of that will happen. But इसमें है ये सब कुछ. अब पता नहीं ये भी प्रूवन है कि नहीं, क्योंकि आई थिंक थोड़ा सा आपको बेसलाइन डेवलप करनी पड़ती है. अगर मैं आपसे बात कर रहा हूँ, सबका रिएक्शन कुछ कुछ अलग होगा.
Does it get difficult for you during shows that you do online versus the ones that you perform in person? Like which one is
which one is better? Live any day. I
obviously
think
live,
ऑनलाइन आई थिंक यार शुरू में तो था, पता ही नहीं था कि ऑनलाइन शो की नाम की एक चीज होती है, जब तक मार्च 2020 नहीं आया. फिर जब करने शुरू करे तो इट वाज लाइक अ dumbed down version of what my live show was. Over the last 2 years, it's become a show of its own. So it is fun. It's not as much fun, and it's still not as great tricks as I can do live. It's not even as entertaining as it would be live. But I think for those 2 years that we were all stuck at home, it was very, very important. It wasn't difficult per se. Difficult in a sense that कि अगर मैं live show देखता था, live show used to end with applause, and that's what drives me.
yeah.
Online show ends with just people in screens standing in their kitchen, sitting in their drawing room. Some of them in their underwear, some of them not caring much, some of them not realizing उनका कैमरा ऑन है कि नहीं, वो म्यूट पे है कि नहीं. मिडवे थ्रू बोल रहे हैं, अरे ये ट्रिक तो मैं भी कर सकता हूँ, उन्हें पता नहीं है कि वो म्यूट पे थे. थिंग्स लाइक दैट. तो it's when a online show ended, it was difficult in a emotional sense कि पता नहीं था कि अब करना क्या है, क्योंकि तालियां तो बजी नहीं, शो खत्म हो गया, पता नहीं कि अच्छा गया कि नहीं गया. बट लाइव शो में वो इंस्टेंट फीडबैक मिल जाता है, तो that's why live shows were better.
And were obviously your tricks must have been different from the things that you would
Yeah,
trick online.
very different. I tried to do the exact same show, which I used to do live, but obviously I had to dumb it down a lot.
And did you still manage to involve the audience?
Yeah, it was still a completely interactive show. I think I tried to do a lot to make it interactive. I had to add a few things. 7-8 months into the pandemic, I realized that it's the first time in the world that every single member has a front row seat. जितने भी लोग देख रहे हैं, everyone will be seeing the exact same thing, and I could use their house as a prop. Because instead of people coming to see me, I was inherently going to their houses and performing. So जैसे अगर आपके पीछे books पड़ी हैं, I used to do a bit where I asked someone to pick up a book, and I used to read their mind based on the book that they're reading. Which I couldn't do in a live show because I can't ask everybody to carry a book.
But can you do that right now also?
No, I have to sort of mentally prepare to do it. But yeah, if you would have given me pre-warning, then definitely I would have been able to do it.
Curiosity got the better of me.
Yeah. But yeah, I started doing a bunch of those where I used props in people's houses as a part of my tricks.
Nice. And the last magic show that I saw was when I was in kindergarten.
Wow.
But if you were to recommend some magic shows that people must watch, so someone like me, because when I was researching for this episode, that's when I started going back to magic and the people who perform and everything. What would those recommendations be in terms of shows?
Karan Singh Magic. No. If you're talking about video magic, then David Blaine. I think आपको बहुत सारे shows मिल जाएंगे David Blaine के. Then Darren Brown, who's this British magician, who's my hero. He's my personal rock star for me. I go to London every 6 months. I have an immense privilege that I can do that. And I go see him perform. That's like a pilgrimage for me. If you want to watch a reality show, not a reality show exactly, but like a Got Talent show, but of magic, there's this show called Penn and Teller Fool Us. Penn and Teller are two huge magicians. They've been performing in Vegas together for the last 20 years, and they've been the longest surviving duet magic act. So, दो लोग एक साथ perform करते हैं. They've been performing since 1970 something. तो 40 साल हो चुके हैं उनको perform करते हुए. And they have this show where if you can go on stage and do a trick which fools Penn and Teller, where they can't figure out how it's done, you get to open in their show in Vegas, which is an incredible show. And it's also a brilliant concept because Got Talent show mein, America's Got Talent, India's Got Talent, aap kuch bhi dekho, there'll be somebody who you think should win, but they get eliminated because not everybody likes them. In Fool Us, nobody is like a winner or a loser. Everyone's there to entertain. And it's just this caveat where only Penn and Teller can figure out how a trick is done. People in the audience can't figure out. So people are entertained regardless. And nobody loses per se. And ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा कि आपको कोई बहुत अच्छा लगा और वो eliminate हो गया, because that's not the concept of the show. So that's something that people should check out. बहुत सारे YouTube पे उसकी videos मिल जाएंगी.
Have there been tricks where they haven't been able to figure out what's
happening? Every episode has one. So there are like 6 magicians per episode, and inevitably there's one person who fools them. There are some who fool them worse than others. Like recently, ये जो One Tamaris की हमने बात करी थी, there is a student of One Tamaris called Danny D. Ortiz, who I had the very nice privilege of meeting also. He did a trick on Penn and Teller, which he's also done on me. So I have that flex. He did that on Penn and Teller, and I have never seen Penn and Teller look this fooled. They look like Karan looked as an 11-year-old when he saw magic for the first time. And that is beautiful to me because अगर कोई खतरनाक म्यूजिशियन या कोई एक्टर होता है जो किसी और का म्यूजिक या एक्टिंग देखता है, they can be charmed by it, they can love it, but they can't go back to that kid that they were when they maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that they can't go back to that. But in magic, you can become a child again. Teller is 72 years old and he looks 11 years old in that video because he's sitting like this. And it's incredible to see that. It's incredible to see a grown 72-year-old man who's been doing magic for 60 years have no idea how something works. Have that twinkle in his eye when he was 11, just because you got that feeling again of wow. It's the only art form that you're a student forever because you learn something new every day. There are like a gazillion tricks and you can learn a new one every day. I know people who just learn magic every day, but they don't perform. They just learn it. They learn a new trick every day, but they don't perform it. It's just the curiosity that they have कि trick सीखने उनको, but perform नहीं करने. And you can do that for the rest of your life because there'll be something new every day inevitably.
Nice. That's very interesting. And because you said school, I just realized, there will be schools of magic, which was something that was, I don't know, I'm making a fool of myself.
No, not at all.
I just realized there'll be schools of magic as well. Right?
There's one.
Oh, there's just one.
There's one. Spain. That's it.
That's it.
That is it. उसमें भी घुसना बहुत मुश्किल है. And because magic is magicians are very sort of private about their secrets. They don't want to teach. अगर मैं अभी आपको trick सिखाता हूँ, it's very, very low chances that you will start doing magic just because I taught you a trick. Very high chances that if I tell you how I figure out somebody's ATM pin or I figure out somebody's password, if you know how it's done, the wonder of it is dead, and you will never watch magic again unless you're a magician.
There used to be this TV show as well, right? On
Magic's Greatest Secrets Revealed. Masked magician aata tha, haan. I think that polarized a lot of people. Some people loved it, some people hated it. Magicians initially hated it, but I think that did more good for magic than bad. Because ये show आया था late 90s, early 2000s में. तब तक magic होता था of stage magic where magicians are dressed in a hat and tuxedo. There are these very sexist way में, there are these showgirls behind you and they're scantily clad, and there was this horrible saying which said that a beautiful woman is the best distraction you can have, which was terrible. And that's the kind of magic that got revealed in that show, which forced magicians to innovate. And I think initially magicians को बहुत गुस्सा चढ़ा था यार हमारे सारे tricks reveal हो रहे हैं. But I think it did more good because it gave birth to people like David Blaine, Chris Angel, Darren Brown, Dynamo. All these people came about after that show. Blaine was still there thoda before that, but I think after that show, it really gave a birth to a new genre of magic, and I think that show was very important back then. तो अगर किसी को सीखना है traditional magic, आप वहां से सीख सकते हो. Magic's greatest secrets revealed.
Do you also have favorite Indian magicians? Because when you said the image of tuxedo, I immediately went back to the magicians I have seen while I was growing up. I mean, the only one that I saw.
Who did you see?
I can't remember, but it was some...
With the pagdi, Gogya Pasha?
I don't remember, but it was a pagdi with like... what do you call it?
Sherwani. Yes. That's Gogya Pasha. Gogya Pasha is a very big magician in Punjab only. Was not so much. He's passed away now. My favorite Indian magicians, there is of course PC Sarkar. He's done more for magic than anybody has. I think he is... the cultural impact he's had globally is incredible. Any global magicians I meet, they know of PC Sarkar, which is amazing. Phir ek hai, who was Indian before 1947 but Pakistan after it. This man called Khuda Baksh, who claimed that he could see with his eyes tied up. So वो अपनी आंखों पे पट्टी बांधते थे and he could see anything. And legend has it that as he grew older, he became blind, but he could still see with he had some X-ray vision or something. So he was medically diagnosed blind, but if you wrote something down on a piece of paper and held it up, he was blind, but he could still tell you what you've written. And he could drive blindfolded, things like that. So Khuda Baksh is one of them, who's the legends of that man are incredible. And there's this man called Ishamuddin Khan, who was the man who taught me my first ever trick. As an 11-year-old, I had gone for a summer camp in this place called Tirthan, Kullu Manali ke paas.
Oh, yeah.
And summer camp mein, one of the activities that we had was magic. And he taught me how to make a card disappear. That was the first trick I learned. And Ishamuddin Khan, later I realized, is a very celebrated name when it comes to Indian street magic. And I had forgotten his name. This is an interesting story. I अपने show में कहानी सुनाता था of how I got into magic. And I said I'd gone for a summer camp in Tirthan and I met a magician there. And then I told the rest of the story. But I didn't remember his name. जब मैं एक बार perform कर रहा था कोई corporate show, front row में एक इंसान बैठा हुआ था, आपस में बात करने शुरू हो गए. And like a high school teacher, I said, please don't talk, or do you want to share what you're talking about with the rest of us? ऐसा कुछ. And that man just got up and said, I organized that summer camp. I know who you're talking about. And I was like, whoa. And then he told me his name is Ishamuddin Khan.
Yeah.
And that moment for me was incredible. After that, I'm friends with Ishamuddin on Facebook. He's still doing magic. His entire family does magic. Unfortunately, he's not doing that well financially. I'm trying to figure out ways where all of us can support him, because the genre of magic he did was the Madari form of magic, which is not that prevalent anymore. Street magic मेलों में आजकल इतना नहीं दिखता है जितना पहले दिखता था. मेले इतने नहीं दिखते जितने पहले दिखते थे. But he definitely, just because the kind of impact, he completely changed my life without realizing it.
Nice. Do you also have a set routine that you perform before you go on stage?
Yeah. It's changed over the years. One of them is, in fact, very, very personal. कोई मुझे मिलता है, they don't believe the fact that I'm very shy and introverted. Because on stage, I'm this loud man and I'm talking. So people think that I might be extrovert, but I'm very shy. I have a huge issue going up to people and talking. And I have a huge issue expressing feelings also, which is a big problem in relationships. Because if you're dating someone and you can't express, then it always becomes a big issue. So for me, my mode of expression is always stage. I tell a story that expresses any emotion that I'm feeling in that moment. So before I go on stage, I collect all the thoughts that I have. So I have a story in my show of me being bullied in school. So I think of the guy who used to bully me, and I walk on stage and then I perform, and I'm basically expressing anything that I felt bad about when I was a kid, when I was being bullied. But it's expressed in a fun way. It's expressed in a humorous way, and it's expressed through magic. But it's still getting that load off my chest. So I think of that before I go on stage. So my dada, who was the biggest influence in my life, he was... the last 2 months of his life, he was in the hospital. I remember the last time I went to visit him. So he hadn't spoken much because he was on a ventilator and he didn't really move much. He maybe waved इतना सा थोड़ा सा अगर लेटे होते थे, अगर ऐसे लेटे हुए हैं तो उनका हाथ ऐसे उठता था, ऐसे करते थे, ऐसे करते थे. So I remember the last time to see him, I his hand and we spoke about. I just said कि आप ठीक हो जाओगे and blah blah blah. And then I was walking out. I just turned around and he had his hand up and he had it like that. And that's one memory I think of every time before I walk on stage, because of the kind of influence he had on my life. And I think that was him sort of blessing me. And after that is when my career sort of really took off. So he never really got to see me do a show. But that moment is something I think of every time I go on stage, before I go on stage, because I would like to think that somewhere I'm doing my shows for him, because he never got to see one. And he was the first person I did every trick on when I was a kid. So I think that's one thing I think of. I also have a Red Bull, if that counts as a pre-show routine. I do that. I walk, and people think I'm nervous, but I'm not. I'm just walking behind stage. I'm just pacing up and down, because I'm. मेरे को लगता है अगर मैं बैठे बैठे फिर स्टेज पे चढ़ जाता हूँ, मैं खुद थोड़ा लो एनर्जी हूँ. अगर मैं भागता रह चलता रहता हूँ, then I walk on stage and I walk onto the edge of the stage, and my first thing is I walk up and I do this. So the moment that happens, somehow, I mean, in my head, it is that sort of feeling that transfers into the entire audience, and they can feel the fact that I have that pent up energy in me, and now everybody's energized, and now people have fun in the show. I think those are just 2-3 things that I do.
Yeah. Because you're also introverted, I'm imagining you'll have a very limited amount of energy that you'll have, right?
Yeah.
So when you have to do you have to decide how much, do you have to maintain your stamina throughout the performance, and then also decide how much energy is going to go into what sector?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the start of the show is always bang, which is like welcome to the show. Then I can sort of calm down. I can talk softer. I can take the audience on a journey with me. And then as it becomes closer to the ending again, that sort of begins to get paced up. It becomes more energetic so that it ends on a high. So yeah, I do have to plan that. But I think that's more from a just good showmanship perspective also, not just being an introvert perspective. But हाँ, थोड़ा सा होता है if I have a show, जैसे Saturday was Bangalore, Sunday was Chandigarh. So Saturday 7 a.m. I took a flight to Bangalore, and Friday entire night we had to shoot, so I didn't sleep at all. We reached there, and I knew that maybe 1 ghanta, if I just sit here, I will be able to preserve a little bit of energy, also get a little bit of rest, then to be able to do that 40-minute show that I had to that evening. So I did that, and then again I know कि मेरी 6:30 बजे मैं सो गया था शाम को. यूजली मैं 4 घंटे सोता हूँ, बट 4 या 5 घंटे. मैं 6:30 बजे शाम को सो गया था, मैं अगले दिन 9 बजे उठा हूँ. So I slept for like 14 hours because I knew the next day is Chandigarh. So I was just sort of preserving that because I knew Chandigarh, even though I was on stage for 20 minutes, I knew those 20 minutes have to be incredible. So for those 20 minutes, you have to prepare the first 48 hours. कुछ हैं बहुत नेचुरल परफॉर्मर्स जो 20 मिनट के शो के लिए 3 सेकंड प्रिपेयर करते हैं और किल करके आ जाते हैं. नहीं करता. मुझे 48 घंटे चाहिए just to make it fine.
This brings me to this question we ask every guest on Chalchitra Talks. If you had a budget of 10,000 rupees, what would you recommend people to go and just buy it? And people recommend Kindle. They've recommended subscription of apps or anything. What do you think that comes under 10,000 rupees ka budget that people must buy?
I can go back to the first thing I said, the Harry Potter series. Buy it, read it. You will learn about love. You will learn about life. You will learn about wonder through magic. You will learn about secrecy. You will learn about inclusiveness. You will learn about the politics of the world because it's good over evil, like any other good story. You learn about discrimination because it has people talking about pure blood, half blood, mud blood, things like this, which is the political debate of today, be it racism, be it religious discrimination. It's all in Harry Potter. All of it is there. It's the biggest learning you can have in life. And 10,000 भी नहीं लगेंगे यार, 7 किताबें 2-2,500 रुपए में आ जाएंगी और आप 7 पढ़ सकते हो. किंडल आप खरीदोगे 9,000 रुपए का, फिर आपके पास पैसे नहीं बचेंगे और किताब खरीदने की. So I would say buy these books, 2,500 rupees, then go out, eat your favorite meal, and then sit at home and read those books. And just with the remaining budget in that 1 month, eat as much food as you can and drink as much, whatever you like, as much as you want while reading the books. सब हो जाएगा 10,000 रुपए में.
That's wonderful. Do you have a favorite genre of music that you listen to a lot, or like just music artists?
I have phases with music. My longest phase was Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and I have been for the last 9 years, listened to Nusrat every single day. That's the first thing I do every single morning. Like I wake up and I play Nusrat every morning for the last 9 years. And I still, of course, there are times when I listen to other things. If I'm with friends, I won't be listening to Nusrat. I also try to do that every now and then. But otherwise, Nusrat and Sufi music is something that's my go-to. If you want other kinds of music, Indian Ocean is someone I listen to a lot. They are one of my favorite. बहुत सही सही गाने हैं उनके, and not just the famous of the famous ones are Bande, Kandisa and Mareva, but उसके beyond उनके बहुत सारे गाने हैं which are incredible. These days, I'm also listening to a lot of Punjabi music since Sidhu Moosewala passed away. I've been listening to a lot of Sidhu, which some of the lyrics in that are incredible in a lot of the songs, and it just hits you so hard, especially if you understand, or I understand a little bit of Punjabi. I mean, a lot of Punjabi. तो मुझे वो समझ आते हैं, and they hit really hard when you understand the music of it, the lyrics of it. But if I had to pick just one, it would be Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, which is a genre on its own.
And do you also listen to podcasts?
Not a lot, but they're not any of the famous sort of podcasts. But in the famous ones, I would consider you also a sort of podcast. So I've heard a bunch of your things. I've heard Lex Friedman a lot, but I think a lot of people have done that. Listen to Lex Friedman in the last year or two. Then there is this podcast which is just for magicians. It is called The Magicians Podcast. Which is an interview with the biggest magicians in the world. So there are 75 episodes. If you're a magician or you're interested in magic and you're interested in the greats of magic, I would listen to it. Everyone's been on it. Darren Brown's been on it. David Copperfield has been on it. Some of the biggest magic minds who are not famous have been on it. So people behind David Blaine, people behind David Copperfield, people behind Darren Brown have all been on the podcast. They don't only talk about magic. They talk about life in general. And I think weirdly, great magicians are people you can learn a lot from because they're the most rational thinkers you'll find. Because magic makes you a kind of person that makes you believe that दुनिया में जो सबसे amazing चीजें होती हैं उन सबकी एक logical explanation होती है. So if I am doing an incredible trick, there's a logical explanation behind it. So magicians that way will be very rational thinkers. Great magicians will be very rational thinkers because they'll always think of a logic behind something. And I think that goes a long way in life. If you can question things and understand the logic behind it, I think you will go really far in life. So do listen to that Magicians podcast.
Nice. And I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Sometimes your answers are so interesting, I just get lost and I forget the follow-up question or anything.
Thank you. I hope comments में भी ये लोग एक सोचे, वरना comments में लोग चल रहे हैं, अरे जब थोड़ी बकचोदी करो, खाली serious बातें क्यों कर रहे हो?
But yeah, but there's also, because you read minds, and for some reason, because I was an only child for until I think the initial 7 to 8 years of my life, and because of the weird kid I was, I never thought about, hey, I should be able to read minds, please grant me that superpower. I'd always be like, hey, what if somebody next to me can read minds? How do I not let that person read it? And then I would try to parallelly think of 10 thoughts to confuse the person. But in actuality, how do you get away from getting your mind read? Or maybe how do you get away from getting caught in a lie?
Yeah, there is this saying that says, if you keep a poker face, you're very difficult to read, which is as far from the truth as it can possibly be. लोगों को लगता है कि अगर वो बस ऐसे बैठे रहेंगे, कोई expression देंगे, मैं उनका mind read नहीं कर पाऊंगा, which is a lie. I would like people to think that it makes my job easier because I talk so much, especially on stage. I know that everything I'm saying will have some kind of a reaction to it. तो आप जितना भी poker face रख लो, आपका एक छोटा सा reaction होगा, which will give it away, which you can't control. As kids, all of us have done this. हमने अपने दोस्त को मुक्का मारने गए, but मारा नहीं है. So we just do that. So the friend's reaction is always eyes closing and head moving back. That's a reaction that will be common to every single person in the world, regardless of where they're from, what their religion is, what their color is. They will all react like that. So there are things you can say while you're doing magic where people will have that universal reaction. It could be this, it could be them swallowing, it could be them moving back, it could be a twitch of the eye, which all conveys information, and I can pick up on that. And you can't control that. Like, this is not something you can control. So these
Right.
are all expressions that you cannot control. तो तुम्हारा जितना भी poker face होगा तुम नहीं control कर सकते हो. So the way to get away from it is something which you only said, that you think of a lot of different things. तो अगर आप बहुत अलग अलग चीजें करते हो, आप हर चीज पे बहुत extreme reaction दे रहे हो, I wouldn't know what to pick up on, which can then catch me out. But उसका भी मैंने एक तोड़ ढूंढ लिया है जो मैं बताऊंगा.
The 7-year-old me was almost there then.
Almost. There's
Almost
only
there.
one person I know only who has managed to do that, and I haven't been able to figure it out initially. But apart from that, nobody has. Everybody thinks that they'll just maintain an expression like that, and I won't be able to figure it out. But that's far from the truth.
Would you then say, okay, this is something that really interests me. Would you then say, are you a good judge of character?
I would like to think so. I think my mother says that. Haan ji.
Is it because of your knowledge of psychology and thereby mind reading, or just?
I think all of us are fairly intuitive when it comes to a few things. Some of us have better intuition and better gut instinct than other people. And I think even before I got into magic, I had a little bit of that without actually realizing it. There was this one time, like my mom always told me that you're a good judge of character. I didn't even know what that meant. So I'm 9 saal ke the. We'd hired a house help. And because my mom and dad used to work, I have an elder brother who used to go to school. Mera school jaldi khatam ho jata tha. Main akela ghar pe hota tha. With me, my house help, and my dog. That was the 3 people. And one of these house helps, I was slightly, without trying to demonize in any way or any way, shape, or form, it's just a one-off incident. I didn't like her much. And I didn't know why I didn't like her. I used to tell my mom and dad that, पता नहीं मुझे वो दीदी अच्छी नहीं लगती हैं. और मैं 9 साल का बच्चा था तब. And my mom and dad were like, oh, shut up, you're just overthinking, blah, blah, because they thought कि मैं बस चाहता हूँ कि वो घर जल्दी आ जाएं ताकि मैं उनके साथ time spend कर पाऊँ. But later we realized that eventually when she left to go do some other work, we realized that she'd been stealing from us for 2 years, and none of us knew. And then we traced her down, and then she had a lot of our possessions which she was selling in a market then. But I don't know why I felt that way. She was very, very nice to me. She gave me the best food. She made the best seekh kebabs I have ever eaten in my life. But kuch unka tha jo mujhe nahi acha lagta tha, and I used to tell my mom and dad that un didi ke baare mein kuch kharab hai. And I think I've had that for a really long time. And then with magic and with psychology that I've studied, I think that's only grown. And I have to be that, because if I'm on stage and I have 2,000 people in the audience and I have to get one person on stage, I have to make sure that the person coming on stage will also be comfortable. And I have to figure that out in like 2 seconds. Look at a person and say, oh, he'll be good on stage, or she'll be good on stage, or they'll be good on stage. And I think that's something that's played really well for me over the years.
How did you work on your intuition? Because that is also something I'm assuming that's important, right?
Yeah.
Managing to trust your intuition.
Yeah, kuch cheezein hain which I realized that, see, stage fright is inherent in every single human being. Do you know why people have stage fright, or do you know why people have a fear of public speaking?
Not really. I'm assuming they're worried, what if something goes wrong?
Yeah, that's what everybody thinks, that fear of judgment, what if something goes wrong. But if you see evolution, sorry, मैं थोड़ा इधर-उधर जा रहा हूँ, but
no problem.
If you look at evolution, पहले जो इंसान होता था, their way of getting food was hunting, right? So if you are the only person, like thousands and thousands of years ago, if you are facing the wrong direction, if you are facing like 1,000 people looking at you, you are prey, you are food for them. And as evolution has happened, our brains somehow have still stuck to that notion that if we are facing 1,000 people in the wrong direction, if you're the only person in a room who's facing the wrong direction, you are prey, you are food for those people. That's where the fear I feel of public speaking and being on stage comes from. But coming back to being a good judge of character, of how you can, how I worked on my intuition was just over time. I think just being on stage since I was 16 years old, and for the last 15 years, about 100, 150 times a year, if I step on stage, I realize that weirdly, if a person is not looking at you, they'll be incredible on stage. If a person who's too eager to come on stage, they'll be terrible, because they'll want to do something which might A, make the trick go wrong, B, make themselves the center. I want them to be the center of attention, but in a controlled way. I don't want it to become their show. It's still my show. I worked on it to make sure that everything works perfectly. I know that if someone's not looking at me and I get them on stage, I can make them comfortable. I know that if it's someone who's sitting alone, they will be incredible on stage, because if they've come alone, I know for a fact that they really want to be there. And that's a tiny thing. And these are just 2-3 things that I know of. I'm sure there are some things which I know of subconsciously, which I can't put words to. But these are, you can look at someone and okay, this one will be great. This one might not be. This will be incredible. Let's get them on. So I do things like that, which are very, very important. And I think it's just to make people feel comfortable in the show. I want them to be there. I want it to be their show as much as it's my show. And for that to happen, I need to pick the perfect person. And I think that's just come over time. It's not a book that you can read and figure out.
Nice. And this is a very, in the recent past, what has been your best experience, especially when you made a shift from online back in 2020 during the COVID time to offline shows?
In terms of shows, what's been my best experience?
Yes.
It's a great question. I think just that first show was incredible, because it was that feeling of, oh, taaliyan baj rahi hain. That feeling, I remember, it wasn't even my show. Veer Das ka show tha Delhi mein. I remember the date. It was 1st of November 2020. 8 mahine hue the of the pandemic, and Veer Das was doing a show in an amphitheater outdoor. 50 people were allowed in a room which seated usually 350 people, social distancing, and I was the opening act. And just as I walked on stage, as I was announced and people applauded, मैंने जो 8 महीने कमरे में बताए थे, I had just, in that moment, I knew that this is why I had picked to do what I do all those years ago. But this moment of being, and during COVID especially, being able to entertain people, making people smile no matter what's happening in the world, and giving them a sense of joy was incredible. Just that first moment of walking on stage, looking up, people smiling, people applauding. I know they're wearing masks, but I could see it in their eyes that they're smiling. And it's a feeling that I keep, anytime that I'm getting slightly lazy, I remind myself of that feeling, that you're doing it for that. Iske liye kar raha hu main. I remember the first time I was on stage and the feeling that I had, and then this time also after the pandemic break. And those are two feelings I can never forget in my life. First time was when I was 16 years old and I performed in my school, farewell. I was in 10th or 11th or 12th ka farewell and I was performing. And I remember when my seniors, my teachers, my principal applauded. In that moment, I knew that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And after the pandemic, I mean, still during the pandemic, but the first time I stepped on stage after performing online for a number of months, I just knew that when the world is open, like thankfully it is now, I will keep telling myself that this is why I'm doing it. And I think I will tell myself for the rest of my life, because kisi ko nahi acha laga. Even the most introverted people didn't want to be home. Sabko bahar nikalna tha. And just seeing the idea that people were smiling, people were laughing, people were applauding, people were happy. And I think that to provide happiness, to provide any form of entertainment is the greatest joy you can have in life, I think.
Nice. There's this one last segment that I want to do, and it's going to be about food.
Okay.
I hope you're a foodie for that.
Yeah, totally. Food recommendations. Pav Bhaji, that's the first dish I remember having in my life as a 3-year-old.
Sorry, that was my Alexa. Sorry.
Okay. So Alexa reacts to Pav Bhaji. That is incredible. Alexa knows. Pav Bhaji would be my first recommendation. That's the first dish I remember eating as a 3-year-old in Shiv Sagar in Vile Parle, Mumbai. That's the first dish I remember eating. Then butter chicken is just the greatest feeling. Butter chicken is a feeling. It's not food.
Yes.
It's a feeling. And my life goal is to go to every country in the world and try butter chicken there. I have done it in 13 countries. And I want to go to all other countries, find a place that sells butter chicken and eat it.
Where's the best butter chicken you found until now?
Best butter chicken is this, I think 2-3 hai. It'll be very dil pe patthar rakh ke mujhe ek pick karna padega, because I think butter chicken mein differentiate nahi karna chahiye.
You can talk about all the 3. I don't have a problem.
Okay, so they're all Delhi based. One of them is this place called Mini Mughal in GK2 in New Delhi, which is incredible. It has the most beautiful, juiciest butter chicken. Then there is this dhaba in also close to GK2 called Qureshi, which open air seating है. ठंड में वहां पे बैठ के मीठी मीठी सी एक अंगीठी लगी होती है नीचे, और वो लाइव टिक्के दिखते हैं तुमको, और वो बटर चिकन लेके आता है, और ओहो जो मजा आता है. यू कैन सी मेरे अंदर का पंजाबी बाहर निकल रहा है इसके बारे में बात करते हुए. थर्ड वन इज एक्चुअली इन चंडीगढ़. थर्ड वन इज दिस प्लेस कॉल्ड तवा. ओहो क्या ही मजा आया था हमारे बटर चिकन खा के. मेरा आधा मोटिवेशन चंडीगढ़ में शो करने का यही होता है कि मेरे को यहाँ जाके बटर चिकन खाना. ड्यूरिंग कोविड कुछ था कि नाइट कर्फ्यू या कुछ होता था, एंड वी कुड डू लिमिटेड सीटिंग वाले शोज. तो 50 लोगों का शो था, और रात को 10 बजे नाइट कर्फ्यू शुरू होना था. तो उसके बाद बटर चिकन ना मिलता. यूजुअली शो 8 बजे होता है, 9:30 खत्म होता है, लोगों को मिलते हैं 10:30 बज जाती हैं. मैंने शो रखा 6 बजे ताकि 7:30 तक शो खत्म और मैं बटर चिकन खाने जाऊं 2.5 घंटे. I didn't make any money on that show because traveling from Delhi to Chandigarh just to sell 50 tickets is a stupid business decision. Right. But I did that just to eat butter chicken at Tawa. It is incredible. Unfortunately, this time I could not go. Yesterday, I went to Pal Dhaba, which is also very famous, but I didn't like it much. Nice. हाँ, पहले मेरे को लगता है पहले बहुत अच्छा होता था.
I've heard the same. But there's this another place in Chandigarh for when you're around next time.
What's it called?
It's called Baba's.
I've been to Baba.
Just next to Social.
Yeah, I've been to Baba.
It's also nice, but
it's also very good. I agree.
But it looks like curry pakora. You have to close your eyes and imagine.
हाँ, वो अब गुड़गांव में भी खुल गया है Baba's. Initially वो लुधियाना का है, वो थोड़ा येलो कलर का बटर चिकन बना के देते हैं.
Right.
वो भी बहुत अच्छा है. I agree, but Tawa is better because it's
the
like
gravy red.
हाँ, the gravy is orangish, reddish the way it's supposed to be. यार मजा आ गया. मैं बटर चिकन खाऊंगा दिन में. There's also in दिल्ली में, because दिल्ली है, उन्होंने एक कंपनी जगह खोली है called बटर चिकन कंपनी, जहाँ पे 16 अलग टाइप के बटर चिकन मिलते हैं. उसमें बाबा बटर चिकन टाइप का भी कुछ मिलता है, उसमें पंडारा रोड का बटर चिकन मिलता है, उसमें दिल्ली क्लासिक बटर चिकन मिलता है, सब कुछ मिलता है वहाँ पे. There is also GK1 में there is मीनार, which also has amazing butter chicken.
Nice.
बहुत बढ़िया. ये बहुत सही कॉन्वर्सेशन है. और कुछ पूछना?
बिरयानी, like what's your, do you like biryani?
यार बिरयानी के साथ I have a very love-hate relationship and I know I'll get a lot of hate for this. मैं बिरयानी खा के पता नहीं, मैं चावल का इतना बड़ा फैन नहीं हूँ. As I've become older, this is TMI, but मेरे को चावल खा के एसिडिटी हो जाती है थोड़ी सी. So I think biryani for me used to be incredible, but not so much anymore. My mother makes incredible mutton biryani. तो अगर किसी को खानी है प्लीज मेरे घर आ जाओ, मैं अपनी मम्मी को बोलूंगा मटन बिरयानी बनाए. मैं वो वाली खाता हूँ. साथ में आई एम एडिक्टेड टू कोका कोला एंड थम्स अप. आई हैव लाइक हाफ अ लीटर अ डे, बट बिरयानी के साथ मैं हमेशा स्प्राइट पीता हूँ फॉर सम रीजन. एंड बट आई डोंट हैव स्पेसिफिक recommendations for biryani. No, I can give recommendations for rolls and momos if you want.
Momos is great. Rolls is also wonderful.
So Rolls King in Delhi, Nizam's in Delhi का double chicken single egg roll. ओहो, साथ में खाओ मैजिक मसाला लेज.
Nice.
मजा आ जाएगा. Then Cuties, which initially opened in North Campus in Delhi, उनके तंदूरी मोमोज, which is I think a bastardizing of the concept of momos. क्या आप उनको स्टीम की जगह तंदूर में डाल रहे हो, मगर उन्होंने जो डाले थे और ऊपर चाट मसाला डाल के पुदीने की चटनी के साथ जो तंदूरी मोमोज लगते हैं, वैसी खुशी जिंदगी में बहुत कम चीजों में. इट्स वेरी वेरी हैवी. यू कैन हैव तंदूरी मोमोज फॉर डिनर. 4 pieces ऑफ तंदूरी मोमोज विल बी डिनर. इट्स दैट हैवी. वो भी मैजिक मसाला लेस के साथ खाओ और साथ में थम्स अप पियो और फिर 2 दिन सो जाओ. इट इज ब्रिलियंट. Also, if you want food recommendations in Delhi, this is a very stereotypical one, but नागपाल के छोले भटूरे is बहुत ही बढ़िया.
Nice.
I will go eat. I will go eat a lot of food. Thankfully, I don't have a show tomorrow, so I will be able to eat and chill now.
But this was amazing, Karan. Thank you so much for doing this episode with us. I hope next time jab aap aao, you can also read my mind when I read those books.
Done. Every single person watching जो मेरी वजह से अगर कोई गलती से यहाँ पे आ गया है मेरी वजह से, तो प्लीज सब्सक्राइब करें. इनके चैनल पे बहुत सही वीडियोस हैं. तन्मय भट्ट वाला इज माय पर्सनल रिकमेंडेशन, वो भी जाके देखें. और इस चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, बेल आइकॉन दबाएं और प्लीज जितनी हो सके इनकी वीडियोस देखें, क्योंकि ये बहुत सही चीजों के बारे में बातें करते हैं. और अगर आप चलचित्र टॉक्स के सब्सक्राइबर हैं तो प्लीज सब्सक्राइब टू करण सिंह मैजिक ऑल्सो. थैंक यू वेरी मच.